how important do you think the story of Satoshi is to Bitcoin, the mythology, so to speak? And I'm going to tie this in with fiat money. I think the symbolism in fiat money, it's very important as well. There is a freaking pyramid with an eye on the back of fiat money. So clearly symbolism in general is important in money. How important is the story of Satoshi? How important was it, Tomer, that Satoshi stepped away when he did?
So first of all, the story of Satoshi is fundamental to Bitcoin, because if the story of Satoshi had been, if almost any single part of it had been any different, I think Bitcoin would be fundamentally different and would be compromised in certain ways. I think the fact that it was such a hard invention to come up with, and in fact, the invention solved a problem that had been proven by mathematicians and computer scientists to be impossible to solve in theory, right? But Satoshi comes up with this practical solution to the Byzantine generals problem, or the double spend problem, that works in practice, even though in theory you can't come up with a solution. And he does so, and he presents it, and we don't know who Satoshi is, right? In advance of releasing this creation, having come up with this incredible invention that also disproved the common wisdom of everybody else, he put his ego on the back end, because it wasn't Satoshi Nakamoto that invented Bitcoin. That was just a pseudonym that whoever did invent Bitcoin used. There is no Satoshi Nakamoto. There's a mask, right? It's a disguise. It's like a superhero costume that is Satoshi Nakamoto. And so this person, whoever it was, knew that they had to do this in a way that preserved their anonymity, just like the superheroes in the comic books, right? We can't know, the people in the universe of Superman can't know that he's Clark Kent. The people in the universe of Spider-Man can't know that he's Peter Parker, because it'll screw everything up, and he needs to be the mythological figure. And that's what Satoshi knew in advance. He did it to protect himself and to be able to release and free the invention from the inventor, right? When Satoshi disappeared, the invention is left to live on its own. And that is a really, really fundamentally crucial element. And it can only happen if we never knew who the inventor was. Like if Vitalik Buterin now says, well, I'm leaving the project, it's still everybody's going to say, well, what do we do about this? What do we do about that? He can't leave. He's forever the inventor. And nobody knows who the inventor of Bitcoin is, right? We have this name, Satoshi Nakamoto, but we don't have a person to attach it to. There's no face, there's no voice. There's just a handful of textual writings, like the white paper, which I have behind me, with it's like such a sacred document that I blew it up. I made it as big as I could. So this whole story of Satoshi is so fundamental to the creation of Bitcoin, that here is this genius who solves a problem, but doesn't flout it, doesn't flout his identity, doesn't use his discovery to gain anything for himself. He doesn't use it to become a powerful man on the world stage. He doesn't use it to become a rich man. He doesn't use it to become a famous man, right? He has zero fame. He has zero wealth. He has zero power. So he surrenders all of it, and he basically makes Bitcoin a gift to the human race. And that is a really extraordinary thing. He didn't do an IPO to get rich, right? Or ICO to get rich. He didn't pre-mine a bunch of coins and sell them for money to venture capitalists. He came up with an invention. He took no credit for it as whoever he was, and he gave it as a gift to the world, and he tended to it until it was mature enough that he could leave it. And then he didn't stick around. He had the courage or the generosity to actually leave and disappear. And so it's really, really extraordinary. It's what makes Bitcoin Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin isn't Bitcoin if there's a leader who we know who they are, and they got rich and they're famous and they're powerful and they're pulling all the strings of Bitcoin. The beauty of Bitcoin is it exists independent of the control of any human being on earth, including its creator. This is what Satoshi did with his money. He didn't use it to buy himself a fancy Lamborghini or to make himself famous or to buy power and influence. He left it as this monument to what he accomplished, which is some of more than what I just elucidated about what he did. And there it is, standing forever. And you can't, it's a price. It's a monument that's worth more than than a million Bitcoin. And no matter how much a million Bitcoin is worth in purchasing power, here is a monument that is going to last forever, that nobody can destroy, right? Nobody can touch it. It's quite amazing. It's about the only indestructible thing in the world, and it's Satoshi's stack of coins. And take it if you can, as I was saying in the story, but you can't, because it's a remnant of it's an effect of the invention that he made, an immalleable, indestructible entity. And his coins stand there as a monument to the indestructibility of it, and to the creativity, and to the generosity and humility that this person, who went by the name Satoshi Nakamoto for a couple of years, represented. I'm missing the exact word, right? But that's what he stood for, and it's quite remarkable. And it is like this superhero story. Like if you were doing a movie that showed the story of whoever Satoshi Nakamoto was, he puts on this cape, he does this heroic deed, and then he disappears and goes off and lives his life however he lives it, but he leaves that whole thing behind. And it becomes, this is probably one of the most well-known brands in the world. He's the creator of the machine that became this brand, that became this incredibly well-known brand without ever spending a nickel on marketing. Like, he never raised any money for it. He didn't buy an ad campaign for Bitcoin. It's like the people came towards this great invention that was created by a single person anonymously, who then abandoned it. And the masses keep getting bigger and bigger, and the value of it keeps getting bigger and bigger, because people recognize the achievement that this thing of Bitcoin is. And he resists all temptation to come back and do anything of the sort of spending these coins. There's been so much, it's not like he's sitting on the brink. There were many times in the history of Bitcoin right now where if money or saving even helping Bitcoin was what he wanted to do, he would have come back to do that. But he let it sit, in a sense, as a test of what was built, right? That it could now stand on its own without its creator's support, but also to continue to exist in that humble way, which is, I've done the thing that I came to do, whatever it was, right? And it wasn't for money, and it wasn't for power, and it wasn't for fame. And this is what takes me back to why Bitcoin becomes such a spiritual awakening for people, because you can see that heroes really do exist. And heroes can accomplish great things that people think are impossible, and they don't have to do it for selfish reasons of fame, power, or money. They can do it for making the world a better place and giving a gift to the world. And that's what Satoshi did. And so it's a really, really extraordinary story with a profound ending, right? Like just such a deep, emotional, and meaningful ending to it. And the story goes on, right? Like Satoshi's part of the story ends, but the story of Bitcoin as this movement that grows, and everyone who's in it is a volunteer. Nobody is forced at the point of a gun to become a Bitcoiner. It is just other human beings recognizing the freedom that this thing gives, the intelligence, the brilliance of the innovation, the efficacy of this machine to continue to tell the truth and continue to stay true to reality. And so more and more people are attracted to it. Armies of nonviolent, consenting, intelligent, peaceful people are marching towards this invention that could only be made possible because there's nobody in charge of it. So, and it's one thing that no other invention can have it, right? Nobody else can rediscover what he discovered, and nobody else who's attempting to recreate Bitcoin is attempting to do it for any reason but money, power, and fame, right? So it's complete opposites in terms of the origin of every one of these alternatives.